In 1982, my daughters walked out the front door on a Sunday afternoon and never came back. The screen door creaked. I remember the sound light, sharp, familiar, then the soft thump of sneakers down the porch steps. Cora's voice floated back to me, sweet and distracted. "I'm taking Lacey to the park. We'll be back before dinner." I didn't even turn around, just told her to keep Lacey away from the street. The screen slammed shut again. That was the last time I heard their voices. Before we start, hit subscribe to help uncover stories they tried to bury, and make sure no name stays forgotten. My name's Elaine James. I'm from Summerfield, Oregon. Back then, we lived in a narrow 2-story with a porch swing and a patchy front lawn that Dennis never quite got around to fixing. We were a quiet family. Not perfect, not loud. Just us. Dennis worked for the county. I ran the house, kept things moving. 3 kids, 1 bathroom, and 1,000 small things to hold together. Cora was 12 that spring, already in that stage where she could be moody one minute and hugging her sister the next. Lacey was 6, all freckles and chipped nail polish. Matt was in between, right at that awkward age where he tried to act older than he was mostly by disappearing into comic books and not talking much. Our life wasn't dramatic. It was routines. Tuna casserole on Wednesdays. Homework at the kitchen table. Sunday mornings I'd fold laundry on the back porch while the kids rode bikes or made chalk drawings up the driveway. If you'd asked me then, I would have told you we were safe. Ordinary. That nothing ever really happened in our part of town. And I would have believed that. The only real shift I remember from that time was Cora starting to act different. Not loud, not alarming, just off. One week she asked if she could change the days she walked Lacey to the park. Said Mondays and Wednesdays would be better. I didn't think anything of it. I was rinsing dishes and halfway listening. Told her to just keep an eye on the clock and get Lacey home by dinner. She didn't push. Cora never pushed. She just said, okay, and that was that. Looking back, I remember little things. Things that meant nothing at the time. The way she avoided eye contact after school. The way she stood stiff when she thought no one was watching. One afternoon, I saw her outside the school talking to a teacher I didn't recognize. Her smile was off too fast, too forced. She waved at Matt, and he waved back, but said nothing to me about it until much later. There's a part of your mind that files those things away. You don't know why. You just know something doesn't sit right. That Sunday was warm for April. I was out back with a basket of sheets and towels, clipping things to the line. Cora came through the door like she always did, with Lacey bouncing close behind. "We'll be back before dinner," she said. I didn't even look up. Just gave her the usual warning about staying away from the road. And then they were gone. By 5 o'clock, I was glancing at the clock. By 5:45, I was on the front porch calling their names. Once. Then again. A tight knot forming in my chest that I didn't have a name for yet. Dennis pulled into the driveway just as I stepped off the porch. He saw my face and set the groceries down without a word. He said, "They're not back." I shook my head. They went to the park. He told me he'd drive over and check. But the park was empty, and that's where everything began to crack. Quietly, almost politely. Just the way a life comes apart when nobody's looking. Dennis came back from the park with nothing. He'd driven the whole loop twice, then circled through the side streets near the school and the corner market. Said he even checked the woods behind the basketball courts just in case. But there was no sign of them. No girls on the swings, no purple backpack, nothing. By then, the light was starting to shift, late-day gold, flattening out across the sidewalk, and I felt it in my chest. That edge, that tightness that something was wrong and already beyond us. He set the grocery bag on the porch and went straight back to the truck. Said he was going to try the other park near the elementary school. I stood at the curb, calling their names down the block. Once. Then again. Just to hear them echo back. By 7, Matt was still on the couch, arms wrapped around his knees, silent. I kept glancing through the front window like they might come running up any second. I called the neighbor, then the next one. Nobody had seen them. Not the retired couple across the street. Not the dog walker who always sat near the fountain with her corgi. Even the kid who worked the playground that day, the one who usually leaned against the fence half asleep, he just shrugged and said he didn't remember any girls matching that description. I knew by the way he said it that he hadn't even looked. I started knocking on doors. Dennis joined me a few blocks over. We didn't talk much, just split up and moved from house to house. The kind of thing you only ever see in old movies. The kind of thing you never think will be your life. The police showed up just after 9. 2 cruisers, red and blue lights bouncing against the front lawn like a warning we didn't understand yet. An officer in his 30s asked for a photo. I handed him the most recent one I had in my wallet. Cora smiling too hard. Lacey missing one front tooth. I listed everything they were wearing, every detail I could scrape together. The butterfly hair clip, the denim jacket, the purple backpack with one busted strap. My voice didn't shake. Not yet. It came out like I was reading off a grocery list. Like if I said it plain enough, they'd just go out and find them. They didn't. That night I sat in the living room with the clip still in my hand. Matt had curled up in the corner chair and fallen asleep without meaning to. Dennis didn't speak, just stood in the doorway with his arms folded. The silence had already begun to settle around us, low and dense like a storm system you can't see but know is coming. The next week passed in pieces. Flyers on every light pole, thumbtacks pressed into corkboards at gas stations, the school entrance, the fire station. Volunteers combed the walking trails near the train tracks, even sent dogs down into the storm drains. There were whispers of sightings at a rest stop outside town. A cashier swore she'd seen a girl matching Cora's build in Eugene. None of it led anywhere. People meant well, but after 10 days the numbers dropped. The search groups got smaller. Reporters started calling less. The flyers faded in the sun. By the end of May, it was just us. Matt was 12. He never said much, but I caught him in Cora's room one day just sitting on the edge of her bed staring at a page from her school notebook. Her name was written in loopy cursive along the margins. That's all. He didn't cry. Neither did I. Crying implies something's over. This wasn't over. It was just missing. After the first year, Dennis stopped going to work for a while. He never talked about it, but the shifts just dried up. He kept himself busy in the garage or went fishing alone. He started using the back door more, avoiding the front hall like it held ghosts. We lived like that for years. Not angry, not broken, just paused. Like 2 people stuck inside a snow globe, no one shook anymore. Matt moved out at 19, got an apartment in Ashland, and never stayed longer than a Sunday visit. And even then he stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets like he wasn't sure if he should sit or leave. I didn't blame him. I didn't know how to talk to him either. So I built a routine: black coffee, crossword puzzles. I vacuumed the hallways nobody walked through and made dinners that never got eaten. The house was clean and dead quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't restful, it's just hollow. I hadn't been back to St. Bridget's since the week after the girls disappeared. Back then, it was the place we lit candles and held hands with strangers. But that Sunday morning, 21 years later, something pulled me off the highway. I don't remember turning the wheel. I just remember passing the old green sign and feeling like something reached out and grabbed my sleeve. I parked without thinking. The church was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries weight. One bell rang overhead as I stepped through the front door. The air inside smelled like dust, old wood, and melted wax. A young man, barely out of college maybe, was sorting books near the altar. I offered to help. I don't know why. I just needed to. We lifted a box together and a Bible slid loose, falling open on the tile. A photo slipped out. It landed face up on the floor between us. 2 girls. One older, one younger. The older one had sharp brown eyes and a smile that looked forced. The younger grinned wide, her hair braided over one shoulder. My knees gave a little. My hands shook. I picked it up and looked closer. It wasn't a photo I recognized. Not from our family albums, not from the police file. But it was them. Cora and Lacey. Just a little older. Maybe a day. Maybe a week. I walked to the church office. The volunteer said Father Lennox was in. He came out from the back with that same gentle smile I remembered from sermons long ago. I didn't wait for pleasantries. I put the photo on his desk and asked him directly, "Where did this come from?" He looked at it a long time, then said the Bible had come from the basement. That people left things over the years, clergy donors, old parishioners. He said he didn't know, but I saw the shift, just a flicker. The way his eyes didn't quite meet mine, the way his hands tightened just slightly in his lap. At home that night, I laid the photo on the dining table. Dennis came in from the porch and saw it, asked where I got it. I told him. He looked at me like I'd lit a match in a gas station. "Don't do this again, Elaine," he said. "Don't chase ghosts." "It's not a ghost," I told him. "It's real. Someone placed it there." He didn't argue, just pushed his chair back and left the room. I stayed there long after. The photo lay beneath the pendant light, casting faint shadows on the table. I traced the edge of Cora's hair the way the sunlight touched the corner of Lacey's smile. Behind them was a brick wall, weathered, slightly cracked at the bottom. A narrow strip of chain-link fence ran behind it. I knew that place. It was the alley behind Summerfield Middle, a back exit the staff used. I'd picked Cora up there once or twice on early dismissal days. I flipped the photo over. There in faint slanted handwriting were 2 words written diagonally across the back. "You're mine." It wasn't Cora's writing, and whoever wrote it had kept that photo, not as a memory, as a possession. And that's when I picked up the phone and called Matt. I told him I needed him to come home, because something had surfaced, and it wasn't over. Not yet. Matt showed up the next day around noon. He parked in the same spot he always had behind the maple tree that never quite took to pruning and stood in the doorway with his jacket zipped up to the collar. I gestured toward the dining table where the photo still sat under the light untouched since the night before. He didn't say anything right away, just stepped inside and picked it up gently, holding it close to his face like he was trying to read something buried under the image. After a long moment, he turned it over. His brow tightened when he saw the writing on the back. "This isn't from any of the photo boxes," he said. I nodded. "It's not her handwriting either," he added. I didn't need to answer. He already knew. He set it down not carelessly but deliberately, like something that might still be warm. I told him where I'd found it, how I had ended up at St. Bridget's, how the Bible had fallen open, how Father Lennox hadn't even blinked. I thought Matt would be skeptical, but he just rubbed his jaw and sat back. Maybe someone had it all this time, he said mostly to himself. Someone close enough to follow her, to watch. Then, after a pause, "But why keep it hidden?" That night I couldn't stop thinking about the brick wall in the background of the photo. I knew it. I had stood there. It was behind the old middle school beside the staff lot. The chain-link fence, the cracked masonry, it hadn't changed in decades. And if the photo was taken there, that meant whoever took it had been close. Closer than we'd ever realized. I hadn't stepped foot on that property since the early search efforts. But the next morning I called Mr. Callahan. He had been the janitor back then. I didn't know if he was still working, but I remembered he'd always been kind. He picked up on the 3rd ring and said he was still there part-time now, helping with maintenance. I asked if I could stop by. He said sure, though I could hear the hesitation in his voice. The building hadn't changed much. The paint was a little more faded, the yard more overgrown, but the bones of it were all the same. I buzzed at the front entrance, and after a minute Callahan came down the hallway, pulling a mop bucket. He blinked when he saw me. "Mrs. James," he said. "Well, I'll be." We exchanged a few quiet words, then he led me to the break room. A metal folding table, a couple of mismatched chairs. He offered me the cleaner one and sat across from me, hands folded on the table. I told him why I was there, that I had questions about that time. Not accusations, just questions. His face changed when I said the word questions. Not surprise, just something careful, something pulled in. I asked if anything had stood out back then. Anything unusual? Teachers, staff, people who seemed off? He was quiet for a moment, then tapped his knuckle against the metal table. There was one, he said slowly. Taught English. Kept to himself mostly. Tall, beard, always carried some thick book in his coat pocket. One of those real, intense types. Watched a lot. I asked what he meant. Recess. After school pickup. He'd linger near the staff doors even when he didn't have duty. Seemed to pay attention more to the older girls. Gave some of us a strange feeling, but you didn't say much back then. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice even. You remember his name? He shook his head. No, sorry. Didn't talk to him much. He wasn't the social kind. Had a habit of tapping his pen on the desk when someone walked in late. Not loud, just enough to make you notice. He was gone not long after everything happened. Took leave, then didn't come back. I looked down at the table. And nobody questioned him. Not that I ever heard, he said. It was chaos. People were looking everywhere, but never too deep. I drove straight from the school to Erin Malone's house. She'd retired a few years back, but still kept a small office behind her kitchen. Her home smelled like old paper and strong coffee, just like it always had. She took the photo from my hands without a word and studied it, flipped it over, read the back. Her lips pressed into a line. This was in a Bible, she asked. I nodded. You haven't been to that church in how long? Not since the week after. She motioned to the kitchen. You want coffee? I said yes. We sat at her table. She wrote a few notes on a yellow legal pad while I explained everything. The photo, the church, the reaction from Father Lennox. She listened the way she always had. No interruptions, no nodding, just a steady gaze and a pen scratching across the paper. So the photo was hidden, she said after a while. In a Bible. Inside the church basement. That's not something you misplace. That's something you store. I told her about the handwriting. The phrase, how it wasn't Cora's. Matt had never seen it either. She studied the photo again and narrowed her eyes. This alley, she said. You recognize it? Middle school, I said. Backlot. She stood and crossed to an old filing cabinet. After digging through a small box marked James Case, she laid out a photo taken from the original investigation, a shot of the same alley, empty shot from a wider angle. The same cracked wall. The same fence. That's the spot, she said. It was late by the time I got home. The house was quiet. Dennis was upstairs. I placed the photo gently on the table again and sat in the dark for a long while, just tracing the outline of the brick with my eyes. I knew now whoever had taken it had been close, not a stranger, not someone passing through. The next morning I climbed into the attic and opened the old boxes we hadn't touched in years. School art projects, baby shoes, faded notebooks. One box held a cracked jewelry case with Cora's little things, earrings, a ribbon bracelet, and a folded church bulletin. The date caught my eye. May 1982. A month after they vanished. I opened it carefully. On the back, in faint pencil, was her name. I drove back to Erin's without calling. She opened the door in sweatpants and a flannel and just stepped aside to let me in. I handed her the bulletin. She unfolded it under the light and pointed to a purple stamp in the corner, St. Bridget's Rectory Lending Library. Her voice was steady when she said, this wasn't handed out to the public. This was part of the rectory collection, which means someone brought it into your house. I stared at it for a long time, then said it out loud. She was there. Either Cora was taken inside or someone brought her things thereafter. Erin didn't respond. She didn't need to. That night I sat on the living room floor with the bulletin in my lap. Dennis stepped inside and saw me there. "Did something happen?" he asked. I turned the paper toward him. I found proof. He lowered himself onto the couch across from me. His hands were loose between his knees. "Why would she have that?" he asked, and it sounded like a question to himself more than to me. "Because she was there," I said again. This time there was no space for doubt. Erin called just after 9. She had gone back through the old rosters, dug out a list from Cora's poetry club. One name stood out, Tina Marks. Erin said she'd moved out of state shortly after the girls disappeared. No forwarding address. But a change of address form from years later led her to a complex in Washington. Erin sent her a letter, a plain one, explained she was revisiting a cold case, asked if she'd be willing to talk. 2 weeks later, a reply arrived. A single line written in careful script. "If this is about Cora James, I'll talk. But only in person. And only with her mother." Erin and I drove to Washington the following week. The building was smaller than I expected. A plain 2-story tucked behind a grocery store and a laundromat, the kind of place you'd walk past without ever noticing. The front walkway was lined with weeds that had started to push through the concrete cracks, and the blinds in most of the windows were drawn. We climbed to the 2nd floor. Erin knocked. No doorbell. There was a soft buzz of a television from inside, then footsteps, slow and cautious. When the door opened, Tina stood there, smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders pulled in, eyes sharp but tired. Her hair was shorter now, tucked behind both ears. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me. Then she stepped aside and motioned us in. The apartment was clean sparse. A couch, a small table, a few paperbacks stacked near the wall. No photos, no clutter. She offered us tea, but didn't wait for an answer. Erin and I sat across from her, the photo already laid on the table between us. Tina's eyes locked on it the moment she sat down. "That's them," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost rehearsed. "That's the photo from behind the school." Erin asked if she recognized where it had come from. Tina shook her head. "I didn't take it, but Cora told me about it." I leaned forward a little. "She told you someone was taking pictures?" "Not directly," Tina said. "But that spring, something changed. She got quiet, real skittish. She didn't want to walk alone anymore. Said someone had been hanging around the store by her street. Showed up after class sometimes. She wouldn't say who, just that she didn't want to see him. And if she said it out loud, it'd make it real." She rubbed her hands together slowly, knuckles pale from the pressure. "There was one day. I found her in the girls' bathroom. She was sitting on the floor, knees pulled in, shaking. Said she wished he'd just stop. I asked if she meant someone at school. She didn't answer. Just wiped her face and told me not to tell anyone. Said if she spoke up, they'd say she misread it, or they'd just move her out of the class and leave him where he was." I looked down at the table. Tina reached under the coffee table and pulled out a small envelope. "He sent me this," she said, "after she disappeared. I think he thought I knew something." Inside was a folded letter written on school stationery, faint yellowing at the edges. The tone was careful, almost clinical. A few lines about how Cora's absence might be affecting her studies, how he was available if she wanted to talk or needed reading suggestions to stay focused. At the bottom was a signature in blue ink. Malcolm Lennox. Erin read it once, then again. Tina added, "He called once too. Left a voicemail. Said I was one of the few students who understood her. That Cora had trusted me. I deleted it the same night. I didn't want it in my house. I asked why she never said anything." Tina's eyes welled up, but she kept her voice steady. because she begged me not to. And then she was gone. And I kept thinking if I'd spoken up, maybe it would have changed something. The drive back was mostly quiet. Erin kept the letter in a file on her lap. At a red light, she said, "The handwriting matches the note on the back of the photo." I nodded but didn't speak. I was trying to hold everything still in my head, trying not to let it scatter. That night, Erin called me again. She'd pulled up a roster of diocesan records. It was buried in the back, just a single line, but it was there. Malcolm J. Lennox English Faculty, Summerfield Middle School, and just below that, Father Peter Lennox St. Bridget's Church. "They're brothers," she said. "That's how he stayed hidden. That's who gave him shelter." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "He didn't just know. He protected him, and no one stopped it." The next morning I called Matt and asked him to come with us. We didn't tell Dennis. He'd already made it clear he didn't want us stirring it up again. But I couldn't carry it by myself. We parked 2 houses down from the church. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that settles without rain. Erin adjusted her coat and double-checked the contents of the folder she brought. Tina's letter, the bulletin, the photo. Matt stood beside me, jaw tight. We walked to the rectory and knocked. Father Lennox answered the door himself. He looked older, his face thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were the same, measured, soft in a way that felt deliberate. He paused when he saw all 3 of us, then stepped back and opened the door. "Please," he said, "come in." The sitting room was dim, the curtains half drawn. A wooden crucifix hung near the kitchen threshold. A framed print of the prodigal son tilted slightly above the mantel. He gestured to the couch, but none of us sat. Erin opened her folder and laid the letter and bulletin on the table between them. "This came from your private library," she said. "We also have testimony from a former student and a photo that turned up in your church inside a Bible." She placed it gently on the table. He looked at it but didn't reach for it. I stepped forward and pointed to the handwriting. "That's not mine. That's not hers. Someone placed this where no one would find it. And you said nothing." His eyes didn't move. "My brother was not well," he said. "He came to me in grief, in spiritual disarray. He confessed sins of obsession, despair. I gave him shelter. I gave him prayer." Matt's voice was low even. "You gave him cover." The priest's tone sharpened. He was disturbed, not violent. "He did not harm your daughters." I said it quietly, but it came out like a strike. "Stop." He tried again. "You want someone to blame. I understand. But my brother—" "Stop," I said again louder. "Don't stand there and lie to my face." He didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch. "You're looking for peace, Mrs. James, but this won't give you that." I stared at him for a long time. "You think I'm chasing peace?" I asked. I buried 2 empty coffins. I sat in silence while my family shattered one piece at a time. "I don't want peace. I want the truth." He stood slowly. "Then dig up his bones," he said. "That's where you'll find what you're looking for. Not here." Outside, the wind had picked up. Erin waited until we were out of earshot before speaking. "He's not denying Malcolm stayed here, but he's denying everything else. He's not denying Matt said. He's avoiding." I stopped beside the car and looked back at the church. The windows glowed faintly from inside, stained glass lit by artificial light. He said, "We want someone to blame," I murmured. "But he already knows exactly who's to blame." Erin pulled out the bulletin again, pointed to the ink stamp on the back. "It's dated May 6th, she said. "That's the same week Malcolm resigned from the school." I turned that over in my head. "He didn't just visit," I said. "He moved in. During the investigation. And his brother welcomed him in," Erin added, "while the whole town was still searching." We sat in the car for a while, none of us ready to drive yet. Back at Aaron's office, we spread everything out on the table, photo bulletin, letter notes, names. Each one heavier now than the day before, each one pointing to the same place. She slid a printed property record across the table. It was for St. Bridget's Rectory. One corner had a handwritten note in cursive. Guest extended clergy stay. No ID. I stared at it, then said, he knew we'd never find them. Because no one ever thinks to look behind a church. Aaron leaned back, eyes fixed on the page. He's hiding something, she said. We just haven't found where. The next morning, I pulled into the lot behind the old school. The main doors were chained shut, but the back entrance still had a keypad for the maintenance staff. Callahan met me there. Keys in hand, said he had a window before his deliveries came in. We walked the same hallway Cora used to pass through every day. The floors still held a faint chemical smell, that old wax and bleach scent that never really fades from school tile. At the end of the hall was a door marked Archives. He unlocked it, flicked the lights on, and let me in alone. The room was colder than the rest of the building. Long shelves ran wall to wall, crammed with binders, yearbooks, and cardboard storage boxes. I made my way down the row until I found what I was looking for, 1982. The cover was dull blue, the school crest stamped on the front in worn silver foil. I carried it to the nearest table and sat. The faculty page was in the center of the book. Rows of black and white portraits, most of them smiling, one or two caught mid-blink. My eyes scanned each face slowly one by one until I saw it. Second row, fifth from the left. There was something off. The face wasn't cut out, but it had been carefully smudged with pencil. Not scribbled, not torn, just faded. Like someone had tried to blur the image without calling attention to it. The name beneath had been sliced out cleanly with a razor. Not ripped. Removed. I sat back for a second, just breathing. Then I turned the page. Cora's photo was in the bottom right of the sophomore spread. A red pen had circled her image. The ink was faded but still visible. A single perfect loop. No other student was marked, just her. I closed the book slowly and carried it down the hallway. Callahan was by the supply closet breaking down cardboard. I showed him the page and asked if he recognized the man. He looked at it for a long time. That's him, he said. That's the one I told you about. Always wore elbow patches. Always looked like he was waiting for something. He tapped the photo with one knuckle. He used to stand by the side doors and just watch. He gave everyone space, but it always felt like he was looking through it, not at it. I flipped the page and pointed at the red circle around Cora's face. I didn't have to ask. He saw it. That's not right, he said. No one else is marked. No, I said. Just her. Back home, I laid the book on the dining table again. This time, I called Dennis and Matt down together. Matt flipped through the pages until he stopped at the faculty section. Who's this? He asked, pointing to the smudged face. That's the man the janitor remembered, I said. The same man Aaron traced in the staff file. He left in '84. No forwarding address. No explanation. I turned to the circled photo, and someone marked Cora. Dennis stared at the page for a long time. You remember when she asked to change the days she walked Lacey to the park, I asked. He nodded. She was scared, Dennis. She didn't say it, but she was. And we missed it. Matt was still staring at the blurred face when he spoke again. I've seen this man before. I looked up. Where? He hesitated. He came to the house once. Asked if you were home. Said he was Cora's teacher. I didn't think anything of it. Figured he was dropping something off. I stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? You were overwhelmed. Dad told me not to worry." The room went quiet. Then Matt added, "We thought we were helping, but we were just pretending it would go away." The next day, Erin and I went to the station. She brought everything: the photo, the letter, the bulletin, the yearbook. A detective named Keller met us in a back room. He was polite but distant, the kind of man who's already seen too many cold files land on his desk without resolution. Erin laid the materials on the table one by one. This teacher's photo was smudged out, his name removed. He quietly resigned after the girls vanished. The janitor remembered him. One of Cora's classmates received a letter from him after her disappearance. And this photo? It was hidden inside a Bible in a church where his brother was the priest. Keller flipped through the photos like he was thumbing a catalog. No date stamp, he said. No fingerprints. No handwriting confirmation. It's all circumstantial. Erin kept her voice calm. "We're not asking for an arrest. We're asking for a deeper look. Who pulled Lennox's file? Who signed off on his departure?" Keller sighed. "I'll ask around. But don't expect miracles. It's an old case. Most of the paper trail is probably gone." I stood slowly. "He took them," I said. "I know he did." Keller nodded once politely. "We'll keep your statement on file." Outside, the air felt sharp. I didn't say anything until we reached the car. He looked at that picture like it was nothing. Erin opened the driver's door. "He doesn't see them," she said. "We do. So we keep going." That evening when I got home, Dennis was standing at the sink drying a plate. It was the first time in weeks I had seen him use the kitchen while I was in the room. He turned when he heard me come in. "I heard you went to the police," he said. I didn't sit down. We had to. He placed the plate down gently. "You're pulling Matt back into this. You're destabilizing everything. We survived this once. Don't rip it open again." I said, "We didn't survive." We paused. His voice tightened. "And you think chasing ghosts will give you peace? I think I need the truth." From the hallway, Matt's voice came quiet but steady. "She's right." We both turned. He stepped into the kitchen holding something in his hand, a torn piece of notebook paper. "I found this in her things," he said. It was stuck between pages. I took it from him, slanted pencil written quick and uneven. Why doesn't he just leave me alone? What a creep. I stared at it. "She wrote this." Matt nodded. It was hers. He didn't have to say what we were both thinking. She'd been afraid. She'd been warning us. We just hadn't listened. The next morning, Erin arranged for us to meet a nurse who'd gone to school with Cora. Her name was Sarah Clay. She worked in a small clinic about half an hour from Summerfield. We met in the staff lounge during her break. She recognized me right away. "You haven't changed much," she said, and I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. Erin handed her the yearbook photo. "Do you remember this man?" Sarah's face darkened. "He taught English," she said. "Real intense. He made everything about Greek tragedy. Cora hated him. Said he made her feel like a character in some story he was writing." Erin asked, "Did she ever mention anything specific?" "Once," Sarah said. "She said he touched her shoulder and she jumped so hard she dropped her book. I asked if she was going to report it. She said no. Said if she told someone they'd just move her and leave him where he was." I sat there, fingers tight around the edge of my coat. Sarah added, "Cora wasn't the kind of girl to make things up. She read people. She noticed things others missed." Erin thanked her, gave her a copy of our contact info in case anything else came back. She said she'd testify if it came to that. Later that day, Erin requested access to staff discipline records at the town hall. An older clerk behind the desk looked over his glasses and frowned. "That'll be hard," he said. "There was a basement flood in '92. A lot of the old HR records were lost. Mold got most of them. No backups." Erin asked. He gave a tired chuckle. "Didn't believe in computers back then." She climbed up to the mezzanine archives and spent 2 hours combing what was left. One ledger listed staff turnover, but the section for disciplinary action had been torn out clean, like it had never existed. That night, back in her office, she opened a separate folder marked Church Inquiries 2003. She began cross-referencing addresses, parish logs, tax filings. She narrowed it down to a single note. Rectory occupant, 1984-1986. Extended guest. No ID on file. No diocesan assignment. Just a name written in cursive that matched the letter to Tina. The handwriting was the same, and that meant something else had survived. Something someone had once buried under good intentions, or something darker. It was Matt who made the connection. Late one evening, he showed up at my door with a stack of yellowing newspaper clippings and a sheet of legal paper folded 3 times. He didn't say much at first, just set everything on the kitchen table and waited. I sat across from him and unfolded the legal page. It was a photocopy of an address change notification filed in 1986. The name on the form was Malcolm J. Lennox. The forwarding address was a church-owned cottage about 40 minutes north of Summerfield, technically listed as a spiritual retreat under the diocese's Rural Property Trust. That's where he went, Matt said. After he left the school, after the police started asking questions. He tapped one of the articles. And this, he added, "This is the man who filed the paperwork." I looked down. Father Peter Lennox, his brother. Aaron picked me up the next morning before sunrise. We didn't tell Dennis. I wasn't ready to hear another lecture about closure or forgiveness. We printed the maps ourselves back roads, mostly the kind that weave through farmland and power lines past collapsing barns and rusted grain silos. The property wasn't listed publicly anymore. We had to match the location using county tax rolls and a utility record that showed one single electric meter still active at the site. As we pulled up the gravel drive, the trees started to close in. Thick pine overgrown brush, tall grass, untouched in years. The cottage appeared in the clearing like a memory that didn't belong. Wooden siding, grayed with age, one shutter half-hanging roofline starting to sink. The front steps creaked when we climbed them. Aaron knocked. Nothing. We waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. She checked the window curtains, drawn dusty but intact. "Let's walk around," she said. Around back we found a cellar door. Padlocked, rusted, but not broken. I bent down and ran my hand along the edge. "There's something wedged in the gap," I said. She crouched beside me. It was a thin wooden slat, like part of an old picture frame, and it had writing on it. One word. Sheepfold. Aaron blinked. "That's a biblical term," she said. "A place of protection, but also captivity." We stood in silence for a long time. Then she called Matt, told him where we were, and asked him to bring bolt cutters. It took him 40 minutes to get there. By then, the wind had picked up low and steady through the trees. Matt didn't ask questions, just walked up, clipped the lock clean, and stood back. Aaron pulled the doors open slowly. A cold, earthy smell came up from below wet concrete old wood, something else faint and metallic. We descended the steps one at a time. The air thickened as we went. The basement was small, low-ceiling dirt floor with patches of poured cement. The only light came from a single hanging bulb near the far wall. Matt found the switch and flicked it on. At first it looked empty. A few broken crates. A rusted filing cabinet. But then Aaron pointed to the far corner. A cot. Mattress stained, sunken in the middle. Next to it, a child's plastic chair. Faded blue. I walked toward it slow. There were deep scrape marks along the cement floor arcs and semicircles like something had been dragged over and over again. In the wall above the cot, someone had etched tiny crosses into the concrete. Maybe 20, maybe more. They weren't spaced evenly, just scattered. Aaron reached into her bag and pulled out gloves and a flashlight. She opened the filing cabinet. Most of it was empty, but in the bottom drawer she found a Polaroid, faded, creased, nearly stuck to the metal. A girl, maybe 12. Face turned away, but the shoes were familiar. Keds, red laces, the kind Cora used to wear. Matt sat down on the stairs, pale. Erin didn't speak. She took out her phone and snapped photos of everything. I touched the edge of the cot just with my fingertips. The metal was cold. There were marks in the wood frame, scratches gouged like someone had picked at it for hours. I stepped back. "We need to call this in," I said. Erin nodded. She moved outside to get a signal. Matt stayed down there a moment longer, then followed. The county sheriff arrived with 2 deputies just before dusk. They sealed the basement, took our statements, and escorted us off the property. Erin handed them everything: photos, the Polaroid, the cellar key, even the piece of wood that read sheepfold. The lead investigator, a woman named Hughes, said they'd need time to process the site. I asked if we could stay in town. She said, "We'll be in touch." That night back at Erin's house, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window looking out at the empty street, waiting for something. I don't know what. Just something. Erin came in around 2 a.m. and handed me a folder. "I've been reviewing his old lecture notes," she said. "Malcolm used to give sermons when his brother was out sick. Guess what one of them was called?" She opened the folder. "The Keeper of the Gate inside the fold." I scanned the lines. Most of it was abstract, but one line stuck out underlined in black ink. "The shepherd protects his flock from the wilderness, even if the lamb must cry." I closed the folder. "He saw himself as righteous. He saw them as his," she said. "Not missing, not dead, claimed." In the morning, we drove to the church again. It was closed. No morning mass. We waited in the car until someone exited from the side office. Erin approached, asked for Father Lennox. The staffer hesitated. "He's not here," she said. "He's taken leave." Where Erin asked. The woman just shook her head. He didn't say. She walked off before we could press further. Matt called later that afternoon. He'd gone through the garage looking for old family photos. In one of the boxes, tucked between Christmas ornaments and tangled string lights, he found an envelope. Inside were 3 drawings, all in crayon. 2 figures under a large red sun, a house with no windows, a dog curled beneath a table. "They're signed K," he said. "I think they were hers. She must have drawn them and hid them away. I drove over that night. We looked at them together under the kitchen light. One of the drawings showed a man tall with no face standing in front of a church. Behind him, in faint red pencil, were 2 children. No mouths, just blank ovals where their faces should have been. We turned them over one by one. On the back of the third was a date, March 3rd, 1984. That was 3 weeks before they vanished. 3 weeks before the whole world fell silent. Erin stood behind me, quiet for a long time. Then she said, "She tried to leave a trail. We just didn't know how to see it." I didn't respond. I couldn't. All I could do was hold that page and feel the weight of every second we'd missed, every word she never got to say. The church-owned retreat property had been declared inactive since the mid-90s, but that didn't stop Erin from filing for access under public safety review. When the county finally approved the order, they turned up one detail that hadn't made it into the police summary in 1986. Father Peter Lennox's personal guest had stayed in the rectory for almost 2 years. No official record, no ID logged, just an internal maintenance request tied to that wing filed 6 times in 16 months, each one signed M. Lennox. After that, the paper trail went cold. The following Sunday, Erin and I drove to the next town over to speak to someone she'd tracked down through an alumni forum. Her name was Beth Casey. She used to sing in the same youth choir Cora joined her sophomore year. We met in the parking lot behind an old cafe. Beth wore sunglasses and carried a plain black folder. "I thought I dreamed most of it," she said, voice low. But then I saw the post and her face, and the memory came back clear as anything. She pulled out a photograph, grainy photocopied from an old yearbook. "This was after rehearsal," she said. "A few of us stayed behind to go over harmonies. Cora had a solo. She was nervous. He said he could help." I looked at the photo. There was a man at the edge of the group, just out of focus, arms crossed. "He wasn't part of the choir?" Erin asked. Beth shook her head. "He wasn't supposed to be there. But he'd show up sometimes. Watch us practice. Said he was helping his brother with records. One night, Cora came out crying. Said he tried to follow her to her car." She paused. "None of us said anything. We just thought he was weird, but not dangerous." She folded the photo back into the folder. "I don't know if it helps," she said, "but I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet again." Back at Erin's office, we laid everything out on the table: clippings, photographs, drawings, the original bulletin, the church log. One piece still didn't fit. The map we'd found at the bottom of Cora's closet had a circle drawn in pencil, thick, deliberate, maybe half a mile from the old train yard. It wasn't labeled. No roads led there directly. But something about the way she'd marked it, like she'd meant for it to be found. Erin scanned the county zoning files and pulled an aerial image from a 1984 agricultural survey. There was something there. Not a structure exactly, more like a clearing. Maybe once used for storage or dumping. We drove out before sunset. The field was dry, packed hard underfoot. The clearing was visible after maybe a 10-minute hike off the old path. And right at the edge, half buried beneath a tangle of moss and bramble, was a piece of corrugated tin. Erin lifted it slowly. Beneath it a wooden hatch, sealed shut with a hook and eye lock long rusted. The wood creaked when we forced it open. A narrow tunnel descended into the earth lined in rotted planks. No steps, just a slope of compacted dirt. I turned to Erin. "You don't have to come." She shook her head. "We go together." We slid down on our backs, boots scraping against the sides. The smell hit first stale mineral tinged with something like mildew and old paper. At the bottom was a crawl space, maybe 6 feet deep, 7 across. The walls were lined in torn insulation. On the far end was a crate covered with a sheet of plastic. I pulled it back. Inside were notebooks. Dozens. Some water-damaged. Some wrapped in wax paper like someone had tried to preserve them. Erin handed me a glove. I reached in and pulled out the top one. It had a red sticker on the front. Inside were pages of handwritten entries, no dates, no names. Just short sentences, repetitive, fragments. The gate must be kept. The fold must be hidden. She asked again. I said no. Erin flipped through the next one. More of the same. Pages and pages of circular thought. Then a list. 23 entries. All numbers. Some crossed out, some underlined. At the bottom of the page, a line scrawled darker than the rest. 2 strayed. 1 cried. The other stayed. We brought the crate up with us. It took 2 trips. Back at the house, Erin began cataloging everything. That night, she called Hughes at the county sheriff's office. The response was different this time. Measured, but serious. They sent a forensic team the next day. The tunnel was declared a historic dump site, officially just a weather shelter left over from old mining days. But the notebooks were impounded. The entries were being transcribed. One of the analysts found a sketch in the back of a journal, a cross-section of the rectory's basement. The same basement where we'd found the cot and the scratched floor. The drawing showed another room adjacent behind a false wall. We met the team out there 2 days later. They used ground-penetrating radar to scan the foundation. Sure enough, there was a void small rectangular, a secondary chamber. It had been sealed with stonework made to look like the original base, but the cement was newer, less weathered. The sheriff's office brought in a structural team. I wasn't allowed inside for the first part. They kept us back behind the tape. Then Hughes walked out face pale. "We found something," she said. "You should sit." Inside the false room was a wooden trunk, locked, weathered, covered in soot and mildew. When they opened it, they found 3 items: a child's sweater, red size 8, a necklace with a broken clasp, and a cassette recorder sealed in plastic wrap. The officer on scene handed the tape to Hughes. She took it to her vehicle, popped it into a battery deck, and hit play. The sound was muffled at first. Then a voice. Young, frightened. "Is it time?" she asked. Then silence. Then a man's voice. Calm, measured. "Not yet. You haven't finished the chapter." Click. Hughes turned off the tape. She didn't look at us for a long time. Then she said, "We'll need dental records and a court order." I didn't speak. I just stood there, staring at the edge of the doorway. The place where the wall had looked whole. The place someone had once passed through and didn't come back. Later that night, Matt came over. He didn't say much, just sat beside me at the table. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. He set it down gently. I opened it. Inside was a hair clip, plastic, purple. The one Cora used to wear when she was nervous. I held it in my hand, and for the first time in years, I let myself remember her laugh. The way she used to tap her pencil on the desk when she was thinking. The way she used to hum under her breath without even realizing it. And I realized then this wasn't about proof anymore. This was about honoring every second she spent trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to leave something behind that someone would recognize. And finally someone had. Someone. The court order came through on a Thursday morning. Hughes called first, then Aaron. The forensic team returned to the property that afternoon, this time with a specialist in structural recovery and a mobile unit from Portland. They opened the sealed room completely and began cataloging the contents under controlled lighting. I was told not to come. I didn't argue. I waited at Aaron's office, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Just past 4, Hughes came in with the lead examiner. She sat across from me, set a folder on the table, and opened it to a single page. Dental records confirmed that the remains found in the crawl space had belonged to a girl between the ages of 12 and 14. Partial decomposition, consistent with a time frame beginning in early 1986. I looked down at the image and knew even before she said the words. "It's Cora," she told me softly. "We're preparing a full report now. But there's more. You should hear it from the team." They didn't find one set of remains. They found 3. 2 juvenile, 1 adult, all female, all buried beneath a false subfloor in different stages of concealment. One of the younger girls wore a bracelet identical to one sold in town in the early 80s, custom-made for the church youth group. The adult had no ID, no dental records on file, but she carried a house key looped onto a shoelace. The shoelace was red, same as the sweater we found in the trunk. Hughes said the team believes the woman may have been complicit at first, possibly someone brought in to manage or groom based on some of the notebook entries. But something changed. There were signs of restraint. Blunt trauma. No name, no note. Just a line scratched onto the inside wall with a nail. She wanted to go home. That was it. No other message. Just that. The recordings were sent to the FBI's regional lab. They digitized and cleaned the audio, confirming there were at least 7 unique voice profiles across the full set of tapes. 4 were children. 2 were male. 1 was older, possibly in his 60s, with a slight southern accent. The final voice didn't match any known sample, but the phrases repeated across tapes were consistent. The gate must be kept. The light is not ready. She will walk when called. Hughes said it sounded like cult language, ritualistic, but fragmented as if pieces were missing or scrambled deliberately. She brought in a consultant who specialized in high-control religious groups. He said the phrasing aligned with certain cloister-style teachings found in some isolated sects, often with a single male leader and rotating female caregivers. He used the word conditioning. I didn't ask him to explain. The tapes combined with the recovered journals formed the basis of a federal indictment. But there was one problem. Father Lennox had died in 1997. Stroke. Buried quietly by the diocese, no investigation, no autopsy. He was never charged. But someone else had been there. Someone still might be. The missing pieces in the journal's dates, initials, names, scratched out, suggested a second figure. One entry ended mid-sentence. He said to wait for, and then nothing. Just a torn page. The investigation widened. Interviews began again. Former parishioners, maintenance workers, even the grocery clerk who used to deliver food to the rectory once a week. Aaron sat in on most of them. I listened to the tapes in private alone, never more than once. In one, a girl says I remember her. She used to sing, and then silence. The kind that feels held in the lungs, too long, too heavy. The sheriff's department offered to bury Cora's remains at county expense. I declined. I had her brought home. The service was small, just me, Matt, Aaron, and a few people from the neighborhood who remembered her face. I asked for no music, no flowers, just quiet. Matt read a poem he'd found in her old journal, one she wrote when she was 10. It ended with the line, "The sky is a door with no lock, and I am the key." That's what we had engraved. After the burial, Aaron handed me a folder. Inside were scanned transcripts of letters, 14 in total, sent from the diocese to an unnamed private donor between 1984 and 1988. The letters referenced ongoing care, spiritual silence, and light stewardship, all signed by Father Lennox. But one letter stood out. Dated June 1986. It was shorter than the rest. "We regret the instability. She was not ready. The gate is closed." The donor's name was redacted, but Aaron flagged the return address. A P.O. box 2 towns over. Still active. Registered to a trust called New Sun Fellowship. We requested a search. The response came within the week. The trust had been dissolved in 1992, but the property associated with it still stood. A converted boarding house, shuttered, never resold. Records showed 2 utilities billed to the site in the last 12 months. The final entry in Cora's last notebook was written in red ink, a single line spaced at the bottom of the page. "He keeps a door behind the cellar wall." Aaron didn't speak when she read it. She just folded the page, closed the folder, and said, "We're not done yet." That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch and watched the shadows move across the lawn. Around 2 in the morning, the wind shifted. I heard something that sounded like a girl humming soft lilting, like it was coming from the swing set we took down 15 years ago. I got up, walked across the yard, and stood in the silence, just to make sure it was gone. Just to remind myself that this time I was still here, and so was the truth. The boarding house was torn down 8 months later, officially condemned. I stood across the road the day they brought in the equipment, bulldozers, men in bright vests, crews moving like they had any idea what had happened inside those walls. They didn't. And I didn't tell them. I watched until the front staircase crumbled, and then I got back in my car and drove home. That was the last time I saw it. The investigation wrapped with 3 confirmed victims, including Cora. The other girls were buried finally with names we pieced together from yearbooks and missing persons reports that had been forgotten at the back of filing cabinets. One was from Yakima, the other a girl from Southern California whose family had long assumed she'd run away. I spoke to her mother on the phone. She didn't cry, just said, "Thank you for not letting her disappear twice." The adult woman, no one ever came forward to claim her. But we gave her a name anyway. Anna. It was written inside the cover of one of the journals, and that was enough for me. Erin moved on to a role with the Department of Justice 2 years later. She still calls every April. Matt and I grew close again in the quiet way siblings do when most of the noise is gone. He has 2 kids now. He asked if he could name his daughter after Cora. I said yes. She has the same sharp smile, same eyes. Sometimes it catches me off guard. There are still nights I wake up without knowing why. Not fear, just that old weight pressing in. I walk the house, make tea, I don't drink, check the locks. The silence is different now. It doesn't feel like something waiting. It just feels like absence. Something that settled after all the dust cleared. The tapes were sealed in evidence. I kept one. I've never played it, just held it once in my hands before tucking it into the back of my desk drawer. Some part of me needs to know it's still there. Not because of what's on it, but because it was real. All of it was real. People talk a lot about justice, what it means, what it looks like. I don't know if we got justice. We got answers. We got truth. We found what was buried and we brought it out into the light. Sometimes that's all you can do. You name the lost. You mark the grave. You don't let them vanish. It's been nearly 40 years since Cora walked Lacey to the park, and I still remember the sound of that screen door. I don't think I'll ever forget it, but I don't need to hold on to every part of that day anymore. Just the good ones. Her laugh, her lopsided braids, the way she hummed while brushing her sister's hair. That's what I keep now. If you've listened this far, thank you. If this story stayed with you, consider sharing it so no name, not Cora's or any of the others, ever gets forgotten again.